because I'm thinking to myself, Moose says, don't read this script, be conversational. I tried to look up. It didn't work out for me. Welcome to the inaugural New York Sports Nation podcast from the Pix 11 Sports Department, high above 42nd Street in the heart of New York City. I am your host, Todd Ehrlich, the executive producer of the Pix 11 Sports Department. We're following up on the highly successful Picks on Pigskin NFL podcast series that covered the Jets and Giants with Greg Buttle, Sean Landetta, and Gary Myers. We think we can do better, and I think we have. This week, we're switching to the NBA, specifically the Knicks and the Nets. We're joined by the stars of Big Apple Ball, airing Thursdays at 6:30 on Pix 11, by the way. Set your DVRs, Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Pix 11, DVRs, set it, hit record, thank you. Do the whole series, why not? That way you don't have to do it every week. I'm just trying to help. We're joined by two number one picks from the 1996 draft. From the Nets, the great Kerry Kittles. Kerry, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dude, we have you every week on TV, now every week on the podcast. And
Let's
from the Knicks, the legend out of Syracuse led him to finals, John Wallace. Thank you for joining us, John.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really looking forward to the podcast.
Well represented here. Sorry, Kerry.
Yes, we do. We do have a lot of Syracuse in the house. It's the right thing to do. And from the Pix 11 Sports Department, our latest hire, our greatest hire, the one, the only, the Moose, Mark Malusis. He's on the loose.
Oh, great to be here. Kerry, John, I was met you last week on TV. That was when my prime in Syracuse, watching those two guys lace it up in the Big East.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is your prime right here, right now. I hired you. I know it.
That's true.
I wanted you in your prime. Speaking of people in their prime, the legendary, the one and only, no average Joe Masseri.
I think John Wallace's championship run with the Orange to that national title game against Kentucky might have been the reason that I ended up attending Syracuse. So as a young, impressionable teenager there.
Wow, John, thank you.
I appreciate that, man.
Enough of the Syracuse fanboy stuff.
All right. Fair enough. You're right.
Let's go,
Kerry.
Cats.
Hey, wait, oh. We don't ever shut up about our Syracuse. Our roots are deep, and it's not our fault that we have Newhouse and you don't. You know, that's why we everywhere. You can't escape Syracuse, baby.
It's true. We cover, we play a 2-3 zone up there, but we cover this industry like a full court press.
Kerry, how are you so good on TV not coming out of Newhouse? How'd you do it? Dude.
I don't know. We all get lucky from some time. Every clock is right 2 times a day,
Right, exactly. So now, you know what? Enough of this Syracuse stuff. Let's start with the guy from Villanova. Let's start with the Nets. KD is back, Kerry. There is joy in Mudville. The Nets right now are sitting in the 8th seed. They were 27-15 on January 15th, if I don't need to remind you, when KD got hurt. Since then, they're 5-16, not so good. Can they go right back to where they were in their winning ways with KD back, Kerry Kittles?
That's a tough question. A guy's been out for that long.
I'm good at this, right? In my prime.
It's tough to make that kind of prediction as far as where they'll regain their step. Especially think about it. I mean, he needs Kyrie Irving to be a full-time employee. And if Kyrie is not going to be able to play until the vaccine mandate has changed, I think the Nets will still find themselves struggling a little bit. They don't have an easy schedule. And I don't expect KD to be super, super sharp, even though, hey, he was leading the league in scoring prior to the injury. So I wouldn't put anything past KD. But listen, Ben Simmons coming back soon, joining the team, trying to figure his way out with the organization. And then hopefully Kyrie back soon. I think the three of them will be a tough for any team in the playoffs.
All right, so let's follow up on that with Ben Simmons. He's now dealing with back issues. I know that you've got a lot of back channels into him and his people. When can we expect to see him back? And what do you expect from him when he does come back?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't played since, sometime in May, I think, in the playoffs last year. And, he's only 25 years old. To be having these back issues is a little bit concerning for me. And, I didn't expect Kevin Durant to come back before Ben Simmons. But we don't know the extent of his recovery and where he is in his process and how they're ramping him up with contact. I mean, first you have to get your basketball win back, and then you have to do that with contact on the court. So my guess is in the next week or so, he'll be in the lineup. And playing 15, 20 minutes a game is all he needs in the beginning. But I would expect the last three weeks of the season for Ben Simmons to be playing a significant role in what the Nets are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I just want to follow up there. Talking about Simmons, Kerry, is this, and John could hop in as well, because you guys obviously know the league backward and forward and played in the league, would be how much you think, if he's physically right, mentally for Simmons, I'm talking about from not dealing with the depression he dealt with, I'm talking about dealing with the downfall in Philadelphia with the 76ers. Is it going to help him knowing that he's got Durant and Kyrie going from being the second guy in Philly behind Embiid to now being kind of the third guy between the two other stars in Brooklyn?
I'll say this and I'll let John respond, but I think playing in that Philadelphia market is a lot of pressure. John played in New York, and when you have that media and you have those fans and you have those high expectations, that's a lot of pressure, especially if you haven't played in a while, and especially if the fans aren't necessarily thrilled about you. But Ben Simmons now has a new fresh start. He's in a new place in Brooklyn. He's going to be welcomed. He's going to be beloved initially in the beginning. So I don't think it's going to be much pressure on him to find his way with this team.
And piggyback on what Kerry was saying, when you get a new fresh beginning, you feel so good. It's like it's rejuvenating. You feel refreshed, and you got a new fan base, new teammates. Let me add that these new teammates are really, really good, and Kyrie and Kevin Durant and the rest of the guys that are there with Nets. So he should be going into the whenever his back gets ready and everything, he should be feeling so good and amped up because he got a new beginning with some great teammates and a great team and a chance to win the title. I mean, you don't need more than that, those factors, to, get yourself ready to play. Hopefully the mental aspect and all that he was going through is behind him. He's working through it and he's getting better. And now he can focus on what he loves to do, what we all want him to be doing, and that's playing basketball.
But, John, how long will it take him to get back into playing shape? It's different working out. It's different being in that shape and then running.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a term, and Kerry knows this, being in optimum shape. That's NBA shape. And it's you only get in the NBA shape playing against other NBA players. You can run up and down and train, but until you're actually in a game and game speed to get in that kind of shape. And also, not just shape, but timing. I don't know if Kerry's ever taken any time off from basketball, but like when you take a week, a month off, and you get back to the game, your timing, your dribbling, everything's off a little bit. So, Kerry and I touched on him when Kyrie first came back. We were amazed at how his timing was so on right from the jump. So Ben Simmons' timing, and you don't have to worry about his shooting as much because he's more of a drive and dish guy and attacking the rim. So from that standpoint, his timing doesn't have to be as on because he's not shooting from that far away. And, dribbling, I'm sure he's been doing that every day. I'm just looking forward to seeing the types of lineups that the Nets can put out there with Simmons, Durant, Kyrie, Patty Mills, Seth Curry, when Joe Harris is healthy, Drummond, it's a rebound machine. I mean, they can put some really tough lineups out there, and especially defensively, I think Ben Simmons makes them exponentially better.
Does that make it any easier, the fact that he, with this team, doesn't have to be relied upon for his scoring as much as maybe when he was in Philadelphia, that he can maybe go out there and his focus on a given night can be to shut down the opposing team's best player on the other side on offense?
Well, think about his game, though. As a facilitator and as a passer, he has to be in rhythm with those shooters. He has to know where they are spotting up, where they like the ball. And there's some timing involved in that. There's some cohesion involved in that. And so even though he's not taking jump shots, teams are going to be forcing him to score. They're going to stay home on the shooters because they know Ben Simmons is looking to spray the ball and not score. So He has to know where those guys are. He has to try to draw traffic and make the passes without turning the ball over. We don't want to see him out there being sloppy with the ball and trying to find these shooters and stuff. So he's got a challenge ahead of himself. And so I think it's going to take some time for him to really get his rhythm on the court, for sure.
Well, he's got about 3 weeks. By the time he comes back until the playoffs, that's the time he's got. So speaking of shooters, Kyrie obviously is a tremendous scorer. Him psychologically, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. It looked like earlier, Adams came out and Silver came out and he might get cleared to play. Then that was shut down. How do you think he's handling this psychologically, Kerry?
Yeah, I think Kyrie Irving really came at peace with his decision back in the fall. I really do. I think he was at peace with his stance on the vaccine mandate. I think he was committed to it. He was rooted in his decision. And I mean, he was rooted. And so I don't think mentally it really affected him. I mean, he knew he was going to get some backlash from certain people in the media and maybe from some fans from not playing in those home games, not getting vaccinated. But I think he's moved past that now. I think he's really looking forward to eventually coming back playing in these home games. And then if that last game is any testament of him being ready, 38 points shows that Kyrie Irving is on a mission right now.
John, do you have any concerns when you look at it in a short period of time? Todd hit upon it. You look at Nash, sometimes his rotations can be a little bit questionable. But this team, this better than anybody about team chemistry having to play a role, about this group being able to come together in such a short period of time to accomplish the goal of getting to the NBA Finals and potentially winning a championship?
No, because Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons are very high IQ basketball guys. So when you really know the game, it makes the game a lot easier to play. When you're able to think the game and stay a step ahead of your opponent, so to speak. So in terms of them getting on the court, I think that's paramount. They do have to get some time together, but I don't think it's the end-all be-all for them. I just think it's absurd. Adam Silver touched on it. I just think it's absurd that the New Jersey Nets, the Brooklyn Nets were able to have visiting teams with players unvaccinated play at their arena and Kyrie couldn't. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It goes one step further. Kyrie can go into Barclays Center now and watch his team play, but he can't step on the floor. He can go to the Brooklyn Nets practice facility, practice with his teammates, but he can't step on the floor at Barclays Center. It just makes no sense the way that this is played out. And I don't know. The mayor just stands behind it and says you can't make an exception for Kyrie. This isn't even a Kyrie exception at this point. This is just make an exception for common sense when it comes to getting back out there and playing. I get, if he had been vaccinated, this would have been a whole lot easier. But now you just can't go and piecemeal it the way that they're doing. I don't understand it.
And honestly, no one does.
Okay, good. Thanks, John. I thought I was.
So getting a handle on the situation is really important. So there's a lot of pieces. It looks like the Nets are built to win if this was the beginning of the season, but it's certainly not the beginning of the season. It's in the final stretch. I like the way the team is constituted. That's me, Joe, despite your face.
No.
However, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on putting the pieces together. Moose touched on the rotations. Nash has been out due to COVID. When he comes back, how much pressure is on him to put the pieces together to drive this team into the playoffs, Kerry?
I mean, you have to imagine that Joe Tsai is paying these guys, and he agreed to bringing in these superstars with the intentions of winning a championship sooner rather than later. And, Kevin Durant is locked in for his contract, and so is Ben Simmons, but I think Kyrie has to re-up this summer. They want to win now. And I don't know if there's going to be many excuses to be had if they don't win. And so I think there's a lot of pressure on Steve Nash to figure it out in 20 games. It's unfortunate that these things have happened, these circumstances have come about, but they have to figure it out. And I'm not sure what the goal will be this year as far as them making the Eastern Conference Finals. They have the scoring now. They have the shooting around the scoring. Now you have a facilitator. You kind of got to get it done. You have a rebounder in Drummond. You kind of got to get it done. So, there's some pressure that's going to be there this year for sure.
Well, Kerry, I mean, when you look at the overall, and the Eastern Conference is really deep. When you look at Miami's been good, defending champs in the Milwaukee Bucks. We know Harden, his impact on Philadelphia. When you look at the overall complexion of the Eastern Conference, are you taking the Brooklyn Nets and then everybody else, or do you think, contention to get to the NBA Finals, how deep does it go?
Man, I can't pick the Nets. They haven't been healthy. They haven't been whole. We haven't seen them whole. How can we pick the Nets? The roster is just on paper, but there's nothing that's there behind it as of now.
Here's the reason.
You kind of have to go with the Bucks.
Gary, don't tell Joe that, because I think he just bet him.
I did. I've been waiting for them. I did just bet the Nets.
I heard that in the newsroom. You got 8-1 to win the title.
So listen,
on the Caesars app, download the Caesars app.
Well, they weren't 8-1 on that one, but we appreciate Caesars obviously there.
Very, very much.
The idea of them playing together in chemistry, I get that, right? But how many games did the big three, the former big three with James Harden, play together? They played 16 games together. They were 13
Sweet
and
16,
3.
though.
It was a sweet 16 because they were 13 and 3 in those games. Talent in the playoffs wins out time and time again. Over a 7-game series, that is what's going to play out. The cream rises to the top. And I don't think the Nets should have been the favorite. I was waiting for them to fall, so they weren't the favorite in the Eastern Conference, which was a little bit mind-boggling to me, given the fact you have the defending champs out there in the Bucks who are playing well. Miami Heat. You mentioned a team with chemistry and cohesion. That's the Miami Heat. I don't want to be an apologist for Steve Nash, but look at the roster and how much turnover there's been for him this year. How can you know what the right rotations are going to be when you don't even know the guy's name in your lineup because there's been so much turnover? And then that big trade at the deadline. I think that the biggest key for them is obviously health and Kyrie playing. If he's playing at home, which I truly believe he will be come playoff time, then I think that the Brooklyn Nets are the team to beat in the East.
Okay. I respect that. I like that. I respect that. We all respect you, Joe.
Stopping Harden and Embiid defensively, though, when those two get going.
Listen, I agree with you.
Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons is answering that question. I appreciate the question asked and answered.
There we go.
But so that brings me to my last Nets question, which is more of a big picture and Sixers question as well. The beard was great in Houston the first week when he was traded there, the honeymoon period, beautiful. With the Nets, oh my God, love at first sight. He came out, triple doubles. I mean, the beard. And now the first 3 games in Philly, wow, he looks great. He's not won a championship yet. Okay, do you think that this will continue into the playoffs?
Man, look, the talent has always been there, the individual talent with James Harden. He's a unique player. The league really hasn't seen him. I mean, he's just an exceptional scorer. I mean, like, as far as a lefty playmaker and scorer, Ginobili is the closest I can think of, perennial all-star, guy that's won championships, but he's just that much better. I mean, he scores so easy. I mean, look, he's got to get it done in the postseason, past the honeymoons, right? And he has to be able to rally those role players. I mean, because we all know, right, the stars usually show up, right? The stars usually get their numbers. Will the role players step up? Last year, we saw that with Joe Harris. He did not show up when we needed him to, when the Nets needed him to. So can he get those role players, Tybalt, Harris, to really get involved? Because Embiid is going to be dominant. He's going to be dominant. But at a certain point, you're going to need someone else to make shots in big baskets. And can Maxey and those other guys be there for him down the stretch? It's going to be fascinating to watch the East. I mean, you have Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Miami. It's going to be a bloodbath in the East this year, guys.
John, I got a question for you. With all of the Kentucky players that the Knicks have, how did they miss out on Maxey?
Oh, man. I mean, who knew Maxey was going to be this good? He's playing unbelievable.
Joe, Masari is the answer to that question.
Hindsight is 2020.
Yes.
But, man, you get enough Kentucky players, you think one would hit like him, but hopefully IQ can grow the way Maxey has.
So let's talk about going from the Wildcats to the Blue Devils. The Knicks seem to have turned into RJ Barrett's team. Is that fair to say, John Wallace?
Yeah, I mean, he's been playing so good. He's and he mentioned something, and Kerry can attest to this. As an NBA player, once the game starts slowing down, and once you start playing at
not so fast or so quick, but just playing at your NBA pace. And that's what RJ's starting to do now. That's what he's talking about lately in terms of the game slowing down. That's why he's been playing so efficiently since he's been back from his ankle injury. And he's steadily ascending. And you're right. It's not about whether it's his team or Julius Randle's team. It's about him being able to carry that kind of weight and being able to count on him for certain numbers every single night. Like that's what you can put certain numbers for stars in every night, no matter what. Sometimes they exceed those numbers, but rarely do they not attain those numbers, especially in the big games. And RJ is starting to become one of those players where you could put 20 plus in the books, 7+ rebounds, 5-6 assists in the books. You can start putting that in the books every game. And when you can count on that, you can kind of game plan a little bit better as a coach.
Frustrating to watch.
I'm just more impressed with his shooting, to be honest with you guys. Like I've watched the kid develop, and you can tell his shooting. He is confident behind that arc, and that was something that we didn't see early on in his career. He was very inconsistent, but now it's like lights out from beyond the arc, and then now you're seeing other areas of his game open up, and he's putting the ball on the floor, making plays. I mean,
what's the ceiling, though, Kerry? What do you think the ceiling though is to Barrett? Like, every Knick fan is talking about, a star coming into the building. Butler spoke glowingly of him Friday night after the Heat came into the Garden and beat the Knicks. LeBron earlier in the season. What do you think, Kerry? What do you think the ceiling is to RJ Barrett? Do you think he's like a transformative player? Do you think he's only 21? People forget about it. He's still awfully young. You think he's going to be an absolute star for this franchise?
I think so. I think he'll be the number one or number two guy with the Knicks, depending on who they're able to get in free agency. But yeah, he's that caliber player. Like, do I see him making multiple All-Star appearances? Yes, that potential is there for him to really grow into that kind of player, for sure. I mean, he has all the tools right now. He's gaining all that confidence. The game is slowing down. The coaches and everyone's trusting him now to have the ball in his hands and to make the right decisions and right plays. And we're seeing him develop in our eyes every week. I mean, you see the growth. And so yes, he is a franchise player. There's no question about it. He is a franchise player.
I know John said that it doesn't matter if this is Julius Randle's team or RJ Barrett's team, but you look at how well he's playing. And then last night in the third quarter, I think he only took 2 shots for them. And, it was toward the end of the quarter. One was a big take where he drew a foul to kind of keep them in the game when the Knicks were just hanging around. When does he get to that point where he goes out there and says, okay, my team is struggling. We need a bucket. Like, I know playing within the offense and everything, but give me the ball. I'm going to put this on my back to either go get a foul or go get a bucket for us right now.
Well, it's not about him just coming out trying to be or taking shots and not taking shots. It was whatever the flow of the offense was at that particular moment. He's not going to just force it. But as he matures and keeps growing and his game keeps getting better, you're going to see more times when he's assertive. You're going to see more 40-point outbursts that he had earlier last week when he dropped 46. You're going to see these types of games more consistently. And I don't think he's, wasn't, taking a back seat or something in the third quarter. Just sometimes in that quarter, the way the game was going, the ball didn't come your way. You didn't get as many shots. It's not like the best players on every team get all the shots each quarter. Sometimes you spread it out. Other guys get rolling sometimes. So, but I'm sure he'll make more of an asserted effort as the Knicks go down the stretch trying to put them in a position to make the playing game.
And that right there is why the Knicks need a point guard out there to be a general, to get the ball into his hands, because they're last in the league, I think, in assists right now after last night's game. That's just a struggle.
Going from awful to beautiful, let's look into the future. So with the emergence of RJ Barrett, does that take pressure off Julius Randle? If that does, can he restore himself to where he was last year? Can they be 2 parts of a big 3, adding somebody in free agency, whether it's a 1, 2, or 3 in the pecking order? Does Barrett's emergence make New York a destination place? And does it give us some optimism moving into the future, Mr. Wallace?
It definitely has to give you optimism. It definitely leaves you feeling good about the future. would love to see how this team would perform with like a top-notch type point guard, a point guard who makes the game easier for everyone, a point guard who gets everyone in their positions, knows who's hot, knows who to call certain plays for certain players, especially when they're rolling, and is also good defensively to slow down the other team's point guard on their attack. And that's why point guards are so vital, because not only do they run your offense and get everyone in shots and all that, they also slow down the other team's offense and trying to cut off the snake of the head of the snake on the other team. So I think, regardless of who the Knicks get, getting a point guard, is vital, especially with Derrick Rose being out again. Thought he was going to be back, and then he had another procedure. Hopefully, he's having a speedy recovery.
Yeah, Kemba didn't work out as we hoped.
They got Kemba for another year.
Yeah,
John, what you mentioned about getting a point guard, like when you look at the younger players on this team, besides RJ, which we spent the last 5-6 minutes talking about, who excites you? You look at McBride as a young player. Emmanuel Quickly is a young player, Obi Toppin. When you look at even with, I know he suffered the knee injury, he might be done for the year, but you think Grimes is the guy that you love?
Grimes is tough, man. He brings it every night. He's got that chip on his shoulder. Tibbs loves him, which means he's working hard and he has the work ethic to keep improving. And work ethic is everything, and he's displayed a tremendous amount of work ethic already in his early part of his career.
Todd is rowing the boat over here. It's something he likes to say around the Pix 11 sports department. We all get in the boat and we row together.
Yeah.
Together.
And we move forward pretty quickly.
That's it. We certainly do. So speaking of defense, Coach Tibbs talks, if you listen to his post-game press conferences, about the importance of the fourth quarter. He's obviously a defensive coach. He's the reigning coach of the year. But they blew another big lead against the 76ers. They had a 16-point lead in the first half, and it disappeared again. What is different this year from last year, John, and why are they not playing defense?
Well, actually, I was doing some games on the radio a couple weeks ago, and I haven't checked the stats in the last couple of games, but at that point, they were still a top 10 defensive team. So everyone's making all this noise about their defense because they were like number one last year in a bunch of categories. I understand that, but they still were a top 10 defensive team at that point.
Now in the fourth quarter, they're not, John.
Well, you can't you got to take the game in totality, and when you go over the whole game, it's not their defense that's failing them. It's their offense. And like you said, they're not getting enough assists. They're not being efficient, especially in the fourth quarter. And those are in the Knicks' pace. They have one of the slowest paces in the NBA, 28th, 29th pace in the NBA, which means they're not getting as many possessions as other teams. And if you're not getting more possession than other teams, and you're not shooting efficiently, that makes it tough from an offensive standpoint to win games. The defense, most nights they're playing defense good enough to win games. I feel like it's been their offense or lack thereof to getting them over the hump. When they blew that lead against the Lakers, they scored 71 points in the first half, and then they came out in the second half, just weren't able to sustain that. So it's the offense, I think, that's been letting them down more than the defense this year.
Kerry, what about playing off what John just mentioned from your perspective? What about the fade? Fournier talked about lack of confidence in the fourth quarter, trying to figure it out. Tibbs coach's mental toughness. What about what you've seen from these fades from the Knicks in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why, right? I think also too, and John could tell you this, there's certain teams, man, when they feel that they have, that you've been letting go of the rope and not fighting through and gutting out wins, they feel energized. They're like, listen, it's the fourth quarter. We may be down 6 or 8 points, but this team's been giving up leads, so let's go get it. So
yeah, it's true.
Here we go again.
Yep, here we go again, guys. We gotta, and now you start fighting and playing against yourselves, and you're fighting the game. And that's what I'm seeing from the Knicks. I see them like fighting the games, making making the game harder than it should be, even though it's the fourth quarter, even though there's pressure that's there. So, it starts with leadership, right? I think that's where it starts. It starts with Tibbs, and it's going to end with Tibbs. But it's also having those guys on the court just playing more together and stop trying to do it more individually and fight the game and let the shots just happen naturally.
When you talk about playing together, I think that is one of the things that we have seen them struggle with throughout the season. When you talk about R.J. Barrett and Julius Randle being two of a big three, they haven't really meshed well when they've been on the court together. It's very much an individual game between them, especially in today's modern NBA where there's so much pick and pop and all that stuff. How come we're not seeing those two guys in that sort of role more with them?
Well, for me, they don't run as much pick and roll with RJ and Julius because RJ likes the pick and roll. It doesn't seem like Julius is in love with the pick and roll. In terms of being the pick pop guy, he more so likes to handle the ball and create his offense. I would love to see him pick and pop a lot more, pick and roll to the at least mid post and catch some of the guards, especially when they're the team they're switching, catching them in the mid post. But they just have to find something that works for them in terms of moving the ball. Like I keep going back and thinking back to the Laker game because everyone was touching the ball. They were fast break points. They were just having a great time. To me, it's the most fun they've had thus far, albeit for one half in the game. So they got to get back to that movement. Everyone's touching the ball, cutting, getting the ball off the glass, pushing it down fast, scoring quick before the defense is set. That's fun basketball. That's efficient basketball. That's being able to score before the D is set. Easy baskets are vital, especially in tough, close games. So,
John, but you know what, John, I'm going to cut you off, but that's what happens though. And Tibbs is like, hey, slow it down. We got to get a good shot. And when you hear that from the coach, slow it down, we got to get a good shot, right? You're not free to play the game and just let the game naturally happen. And so there now in lies, well, how are we going? What's the good shot? Is it with 16 on the clock or is it with 4 or 5 on the clock? And now you're passing up good shots. Those scoring opportunities aren't there anymore because you're just not letting the game happen naturally. And so they play slow. They play so slow in the fourth quarter, like they're just afraid to play and attack the game.
Yeah, but
the defense is always set, and the game is just now they're sitting in Julius Randle's lap. He's got nowhere to go.
Yeah, and part of that is because Derrick Rose has been out the game. Derrick Rose was the fourth quarter closer last year, and I don't care what defense you're playing, he was able to break it down. So without Derrick Rose being in the lineup, everything has changed. And without having a point guard out there besides Derrick Rose, their game has changed. For as much as Alfred Payton couldn't shoot, he was able to set guys up and average a lot of assists. He was a great defender, so he was able to man the ship until Derrick Rose came in and took over in the second quarter and fourth quarter of games. Most of the times last year, Derrick Rose is finishing the games, and that's the difference. You don't have to say slow it down when Derrick Rose is pushing it because you know he's going to make a good decision or a good shot for you every single time down. Now you have
the best part of the show, Kerry. I love that you got John so heated out there. We need Derrick Rose back. I think we can all acknowledge that there. The Knicks need improved play at point guard. It's crazy to think, though, that they're getting in their own heads in the fourth quarter because they're slowing it down and getting tight. You just talked about, Kerry, the confidence that Barrett's been showing out there. Hopefully that can continue throughout the game. Maybe they can close some of them out down the stretch here.
So I like to be positive here on the New York Sports Nation podcast.
Always.
I'd like to end on a rosy note.
Yeah.
Speaking of Derrick Rose and speaking of building blocks. So, John, looking ahead to next season, we have already established here, which means it'll be shared with Knicks management, that we have the building blocks. We've got the big two in Barrett and Randle. So we just need to add one more. Who else on these Knicks, John, would you like them to keep as building blocks for the future?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer because
it's what I do here, John. I ask the tough questions.
Yeah, and for me, you're only seeing the guys and how they playing during the games, building block guys, and some of the ancillary players. You got to know what their work ethic is, how they practice, what's going on in practice, and that's why the guys, Leon and Scott Perry and Wesley, they'll be making those decisions to see who's going to stay and who fits the culture, who's going to be part of this movement going forward in terms of the winning and bringing the title to New York that's been eluding the Knicks for so long. So those guys who get paid to make those decisions, they're going to definitely make the right decision. And I'm looking forward to the decisions they make. Sometimes out of your hands in terms of where you fall in the draft. But hopefully we're able to get some not only draft help, but possibly free agency help for next year.
Well, I'll tell you, John, we're not paid to make those decisions, but I feel like we're helping anyway.
Yeah.
So for free, we're helping out. So I want to thank you guys very much for the great Kerry Kittles, the equally great John Wallace, the Moose, who's on the loose here, Pix 11, No Average Joe. I am Todd Ehrlich, thanking you for listening to the inaugural New York Sports Nation podcast. And watch tonight, 6:30, Pix 11. Thank you, everybody. Set the DVR.
Todd Ehrlich's helping everyone out.
Right, I'm helping everybody. Set the DVR. And download that Caesar betting app.